It's February 19th, 2020, and you're listening to the Northern Parlay. I'm BurritoJesus, and I am flying solo right now. Calico Jack is out of town on business, I guess. And so we're going to split up the pod this week, do half just be by myself, and then hopefully later in the week we'll connect with Calico and do our guess the lines and our best bets and things like that. For this episode, I'll probably just kind of talk through some kind of interesting statistical things we learned from week 2, kind of look at some things going forward. So why don't we start with the week 3 lines right now as I'm recording this, and this is Wednesday night. The Houston Roughnecks are favored by 6.5 over the Tampa Bay Vipers. The Renegades are favored by 4.5 over the Dragons. That's the Saturday games. And the Sunday games, the Guardians are 10-point underdogs on the road in St. Louis, and the Defenders are 8-point favorites on the road in LA. So some pretty interesting, I guess, opening lines this week. A lot bigger numbers than we've seen kind of in previous weeks. Also kind of trending towards even larger. So the Roughnecks only opened at 4.5, and now they're favored by 6.5. And there were some 7s today. I saw 7 at Bodog. So yeah, big favorites becoming even larger favorites. The BattleHawks as well open at 9 and are now 10-point favorites. So I think people are kind of a bit more confident as to who they think the good teams are and who the bad teams are. And so they're kind of putting their money, I guess, where they think the good teams are. But as we kind of go forward, I think kind of later in the episode I'll talk about it. But I think maybe, again, it's a little bit too early to kind of be this solidified. And these numbers aren't representative of the XFL, I don't think, because I think there's a lot more parity than people are assuming. And there's some things that kind of go into like why these teams look so good in the first couple of weeks and why they might not actually be as far apart as they seem. Also kind of interesting, the totals are trending downwards again this week. The Roughnecks Vipers open at 46, now it's 44.5. The Renegades and the Dragons open at 44 and now at 43.5. The Guardians and Battlehawks at 41, now at 40. And the Defenders and Wildcats have stayed the same at 44. So totals are trending downwards again. And these are all numbers from Bet365 Wednesday night. So I think people are also, I guess they're kind of settling into the fact that maybe the league isn't going to be as offensive as people think. I think I kind of agree with that as well. Like kind of now that we have 2 weeks of data to look at, I kind of agree with it as well. It seems like the league, there just isn't as much offense as people were expecting, and who knows, maybe as teams kind of get used to each other, that will trend kind of in the opposite direction with teams scoring more points. But for now, it seems like maybe even these totals are a little bit too high. Moving on, one of the things I wanted to talk about this week is looking at teams that have value and teams that are maybe undervalued going forward. If you look at a team like the BattleHawks, they weren't getting respected enough. They were heavy underdogs in both their early matchups, and they've proven kind of more than capable of covering those numbers, and now they're a heavy favorite against the Guardians. So I don't think it's going to be hard to find value betting on the BattleHawks going forward. Like, I wouldn't take them at 10 even over the Guardians, who looked completely awful last week. So now it's kind of like, okay, well, which teams that are out there are going to be undervalued in the market? And the biggest team I'm going to look at is the Vipers. Now, I talk a lot about success rate. So success rate is a stat that I've pulled from Warren Sharp, who does a lot of work on the NFL. And I just wanted to define it just to keep it in your mind. So an offense runs a successful play if it gains 40% of the yards to go on first down, 60% of the yards to go on second down, and 100% of the yards on third and fourth. And the reason why I'm talking about success rate, and I just mentioned the Vipers, is because their defense has been very good this season by that metric. They're holding opposing offenses to less than 30% successful plays. I'm cautious about their quarterbacking, and again, as I record this on Wednesday, Aaron Murray hasn't practiced yet this week, so their quarterbacking situation is like pretty iffy. That being said, I think they can do enough to kind of score on offense this week against the Roughnecks, and I kind of am favoring them to cover the spread for sure, and maybe even to win the game in an upset. Another thing to keep in mind, now that we're 2 weeks into the season, the Vipers are the only team that haven't played a home game yet. And in doing so, they've probably racked up the most playing yards in the league by playing 2 games on the road on opposite sides of the country in New York and Seattle. So I think this week we'll kind of see that the Vipers maybe have been a little bit underperforming as far as the actual scoreboard goes, but their underlying numbers look a lot better, and we'll see whether or not they can actually turn that into some real points and potentially a victory against the Roughnecks this week. One thing that I think is going to be a recurring theme this season is complaining about the BattleHawks. So this segment I nicknamed This Week in BattleHawks Complaints. I think they probably are either the third or maybe can get to as high as the second best team in the league, but they're being held back by their coaching. So far this season, the BattleHawks are the rush heaviest team in the league. They run on 50% of their plays, and the league average is 36%. They rush the ball on first down, the second most in the league behind the Dragons barely at 58%, and that's 14 percentage points higher than the league average. And now this is despite having below average success running the ball overall and on first down specifically. On first down, they're successful running the ball 39% of the time versus a 45% league average. And they keep running the ball despite having the second highest percentage of successful plays passing the ball. So this week I took a look at teams' third down rates as far as like how many third and shorts, third and longs, third and mediums they had. And I was kind of surprised to find that the BattleHawks actually have the third lowest in the league. Their average distance on third down is 7 yards to go, and the league average is 7.46. And they also have a below average number of third and longs as well. But I think they can do even better on offense if they commit to throwing it more on first down and overall in general, because they have a quarterback in Jordan Ta'amu who is capable of making plays and throwing the ball and like picking up first downs with his arm. Also, I want to note that they're throwing it deep the least at below 10%, which is way below league average. And Ta'amu has so far this season only thrown 6 passes qualified as deep by XFL's play-by-play. And he hasn't been successful so far, but I don't think that means that he won't be able to make those plays. I feel like he is capable given the accuracy he's shown on all of his other throws so far this season. And I think they just really need to commit to throwing it more, and they'll find that their offense will be a lot more successful. Talking about deep passing rates, I want to go into kind of some more unexpected statistical takeaways from this week. Normally, I would leave this for Calico Jack to guess, but which two teams do you think are throwing it the deep the most on their passing plays this season? And it's the Defenders and the Guardians. So the Guardians haven't had any success at all throwing it deep. McGloin just hasn't been able to connect on those throws, whereas the Defenders are having a crazy, seems like maybe a statistical outlier in success throwing it deep so far. So the Defenders and the Guardians are basically on opposite ends of the spectrum. The league average success rate on deep throws this season is 28%. The Defenders are at a crazy 55%, and the Guardians at a 17.6%. I'm not too sure. I have no basis, but it's kind of more of a hunch than anything else. I feel like over the length of the season, it's going to be hard for the Defenders to keep being that successful throwing deep. It just seems like there's so much more luck kind of that goes into kind of completing that many deep passes that has maybe benefited the Defenders so far. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. And it's one of the reasons why I may be a little bit more cautious about the Defenders kind of as far as being maybe a complete stratosphere above the rest of the league. I feel like they're definitely in one of the best teams in the league, one of the best two, but I don't think they're so far and above any other team in the league. I just feel like they're good, not say incredible or untouchable. It'll be interesting to see whether or not that kind of trends downward as the season goes on. So kind of getting into my second unexpected statistical takeaway, the two most successful teams throwing deep this season, who do you think those two are? Obviously, I already said one in the Defenders. The second one is the Vipers, which I think would surprise people, but they've been able to throw passes successfully when they've thrown deep 43% of the time. And I feel like they have potential. Maybe that number is obviously going to come down as the season goes on, but I still feel like their offense has potential to be a competent offense at least, and to actually get them in some games. I don't feel like what they've shown so far is what they are. So in the absence of Calico Jack challenging my quarterback power rankings, I kind of get to do them uncontested this week. And I went and ranked what are kind of the projected starters, assumed starters. Again, Aaron Murray's hurt so far this week. He hasn't practiced. So Aaron Murray plays on Saturday, so we basically have 2 days of practices potentially that he could suit up and play, but I'd be surprised if he plays this week, so it's more likely maybe it's going to be another Taylor Cornelius, Quentin Flowers dual back situation, but I still put him in the power rankings here. So at my tier 1, I have PJ Walker, Jordan Ta'amu, and Cardale Jones in those 3. So Cardale Jones, I think obviously he's been good so far this season, but I also don't think he's as good as his number has shown so far. As I kind of covered in the previous section, they've been throwing the ball deep a lot, which is good, but they've also been successful, maybe I think, like over an unlikely continue amount, in the sense that it feels like that they're kind of due for some negative regression. And if you look at the rest of the field, as far as like how Cardale Jones has done, kind of the rest of the field, he hasn't been as great throwing the ball short. It just seems like it'd be a lot harder for him to keep up his accuracy and to be successful at that rate for the rest of the season. So I've kind of reflected that in my power rankings this week, and I put him below Ta'amu and PJ Walker. I don't think there's not much argument, I don't think, for these like top 3. Like, I feel like these are kind of consensus 3 best quarterbacks in the league. Though, I mean, if you have a different thought on that, feel free to email me. My email is burritojesus.delicious@gmail.com. I'm always curious to hear what other people think as far as quarterbacks in this league go. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of a consensus tier 1 with PJ Walker, Jordan Ta'amu, Cardale Jones in that order, or in some other order. In tier 2, I have Landry Jones. This last week, I feel like people maybe are a bit down on him after the expectations kind of coming into the week. He did make some pretty bad mistakes in their win over the Wildcats, but I feel like he has a lot of potential to be kind of close to those other tier 1 quarterbacks as the season goes on. Like, if he can clean up those mental mistakes, like, I don't expect him to continue throwing interceptions at the rate at the terrible rate he showed in the Wildcats game. In the NFL, I looked at his interception rate. It was 4.1%. It was 2.38% in the NCAA, which is below average as far as quarterbacks I looked at that are in the XFL. And I feel like going forward, I feel like he can clean up those mistakes, and he should kind of, I guess, be with those other top tier quarterbacks as the rest of the season goes on. In his one game so far this season, there was 47 passing plays, and he accumulated 318 yards. So he has the second best net yards per attempt so far in the league. So I feel like, yeah, going forward, he should be able to kind of be one of those tier 1 quarterbacks. My tier 3, I have Josh Johnson. It wasn't a great debut for him, but he looked like good enough, I think. Maybe he was like still a little bit hurt. He can maybe get a little bit healthier. It seemed like maybe he was kind of rushing back from what the injury was. And I think I don't know if he'll ever be like as good as kind of those top tier quarterbacks in the XFL, but he should be better than the bottom tier is kind of my expectation. And people were expecting a lot better of him. He was, I think, ranked pretty highly kind of heading into the season. So I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach, but I still think he's better than who I have in my tier 4. And my tier 4 are Matt McGloin, Aaron Murray, and Brandon Silvers in that order. McGloin was a lot better in the first week of the season than he was obviously last week. But I don't know. It seems like he doesn't really have that high of a ceiling. I think he maybe has a higher floor than kind of these bottom tier guys in Aaron Murray and Brandon Silvers. That being said, it was pretty ugly last week, but I feel like maybe he can kind of show a little bit more this week against St. Louis. I know that a lot of people, I think, are thinking that the BattleHawks have one of the best defenses in the league so far this season. But if you look at success rate, they are near the bottom so far. So the top 2 teams as far as successful plays against the pass on defense are the Defenders and Vipers. The bottom 2 are the BattleHawks and Wildcats. If they're one of the better defense in the league, then they should be able to hold Matt McGloin this week. But I'm kind of thinking that they might not be able to. Like, that the Guardians should be able to move the ball against them, which maybe gives them hope in covering that number. I haven't read anything as far as maybe the Guardians are considering a quarterback change, considering all the negativity that was coming from Matt McGloin on the sidelines and his sideline interviews. It was a little bit rough to watch. It seemed like there was a lot of strife and disagreement between him and Kevin Gilbride. But this is, again, I mean, they've had a somewhat tough slate of defenses that they played so far. Feel like And obviously they played the Defenders, who I think probably is the best defense in the league. So hopefully for Guardians fans, McGloin can show more and maybe do a bit more against the BattleHawks this week. And hopefully for people, I guess, that believe in the Guardians want to bet on them. I mean, there's just no way you would be able to, I think, take that other side of the equation and lay 10 points with the BattleHawks. So that's really all I want to talk about and cover this week. Looking forward to another weekend of XFL football. If I had to rank the games that I'm most interested in, I think Roughnecks and Vipers, just because if you believe that the Vipers can do more than they've shown, which I do believe that the Vipers can be better than they've shown so far this season. This is basically the kind of like put up or shut up game. The Roughnecks haven't played a game on the road yet. This is their first road game. The Vipers haven't played a game at home yet. This is their first home game. So it's one of those things where I feel like people forget that playing on the road is a lot different than playing at home, and like you can look as good as the Roughnecks did at home, but it's a completely different thing when you go on the road. And I'm, again, kind of vice versa for the Vipers, where they probably are better than they've shown in their first two road games. But yeah, well, hopefully we'll be back later in the week with our best bets and our Guess the Lines segment. I'm BurritoJesus. You can follow me on Twitter at Burrito_Jesus. You can email us, and any questions, complaints, concerns, great stories and degenerate gambling you want to send to us, email me at burritojesus.delicious@gmail.com, and we'll talk to you later in the week.